We take the units that guys are using, the catapult or the stats boards. We all colloquially call them GPS units, but they're inertial motion sensors, right? So they got accelerometers, gyroscopes, magnetometers. So we take that unit and we put it in a special belt and we mount it on the lumbar spine. So what that means is we then start to understand the body's estimated center of mass and how that moves. So then if you go to first principles, before we start trying to diagnose or to try and read data, first principles, the things we know about running require vertical force and anterior posterior force. So the two key elements of kinetics. Most important starting point. From there, we go to the kinematic variables, of which ground contact is one. Ground contact can be driven by our kinetic forces, but then all the kinematics around step length, step frequency, then you have your thigh angular velocities, your flight time, your ground contact time, all of those pieces. Right? So then we've got how do our limbs move through space and time and create the position for us to exert force on the ground. So that works in acceleration and in top speed. So the ability to understand those fundamental principles and then how we maximize them. So how do we maximize them for the athlete? All right, so that's what we try to do with SpeedSync, is to bring those variables into a methodology where we can measure them for coaches. We can provide feedback on the field. And by using those inertial sensors, the GPS sensors that everybody's wearing, it's a viable way for us to do it. So one of our college teams at the moment, we're measuring about 93 athletes every Friday afternoon, all at once. So they'll do 5 reps, everybody measured, data gets downloaded, and we process it, and it's ready for reporting and reading the next day. No problem.
Within those 93 athletes, that's a lot. Now you talked about whether it's StatsBoard, GPS, or Catapult. So there's already stuff that's going on. What are some of the main metrics that you're telling coaches, hey, look at this one before you look at this one, and it's sort of a hierarchy of, all right, when you have it, this is where you need to start.
Right. So the way we teach it is that we start with ground contact first, ground contact time. GCT sits between the big kinetic rocks of vertical and horizontal force and the kinematic variables of particularly stride length, stride frequency, and the like. And so there's a push-pull relationship between them. Peter Wayne demonstrated everything about vertical force. JB Moran told us about anterior-posterior. But Ken Clark more recently has been the one leading the charge, saying, well, if we reposition the foot and we get it into place quickly, and we can get it to the ground fast, which is thigh angular velocity, it changes the way we apply force to the ground. So when we talk to coaches, we say, and the way we work through our system is very simple. GCT first. We're looking for 2 things. Ideally left to right balance, but we're also looking for how does it measure up against normative data? So is it low, is it high? Now, all of our data is measured across velocity. We don't just take a maximum rep. We'll measure it through warm-ups. We'll get 60, 70, 80, 90%. So we model our athletes across speed. Because what I want to know incredibly, this is the center of everything I've done for the last decade, is how does the athlete's strategies change with speed? Right? We know from research that around about 7 meters per second, maybe a little bit slower in field sport athletes, we get the change of muscle contraction types. Right? We get different patterns in muscle contraction, recruitment, in sprinting. So we want to understand, does that change for people? Do people become more stride length dependent or more stride frequency? Are they still able, as JB Moran would say, are they still able to generate horizontal force as they are working at higher speeds? That's what he talks about, that decay of horizontal versus vertical forces. So understanding those principles and starting from ground contact time. So we go ground contact time, then we go into kinetics. Are the horizontal and vertical same thing? Are they equal left to right? Are they normal against the population? If you start to see differences, then we start to ask questions. Where's that coming from? So when we see the guy that I talked about before, the NFL lineman, we could see on his left leg that his horizontal forces were quite good. So he was pulling on the ground, but his right leg wasn't. And as it turns out, he'd had an ankle reconstruction 2 years previous, which the current staff were not aware of. But an ankle reconstruction, what we've seen time and time again, athletes don't want to bring the foot to the ground. So what they do is they'll come up into front side. And if you're watching this, you can see me run with my fingers. They come into front side and then that leg just goes soft to the ground. They don't want to slam that ankle back into the ground. Now, that's not strength. That's motor control. That's the athlete losing a pattern. I was working this morning with a basketball girl in Australia coming off an ACL reconstruction. Right? And we're working on that, sustaining or eliminating that valgus moment of the femur. And she said, "Oh, how do I get stronger?" I said, "I don't think you need to get stronger. You're strong enough. What you don't have is your motor pattern's fallen away. How long were you on crutches for?" She said, "Whatever, 3-4 weeks." How long does it take to develop a new pattern? It takes less than 21 days to develop a new habit. So she's already developed a bad habit because of the injury. So what I'm saying, what we see in rehab all the time in running, we see guys get strong enough, but we don't do enough running on the field to get the skill back.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.